Hey, Colin, that was beautiful, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Chronicling the life of a legend, our own, very own William Shakespeare. I think this is the very first documentary that that humanized uh, Professor Wole Soyinka. Uh, Everything we've had is what made us revere him. So meeting his family, speaking to his kids, uh, understanding what makes him tick. You understand? Yeah, this is what because I am very familiar uh, of him and his work, and I have I've had the privilege of meeting him once while we're filming in India, and he's a great guy, great guy. Yeah, but thank you. So, what were your challenges making this project?
Um, well, thank you first of all for your wonderful response. Actually, mo most of what I've heard from everyone has been that the film introduced them to Soyinka as a man, as a human being,
Mhm.
rather than as this huge, gigantic literary icon everybody knows, which was exactly my purpose, really. Along with a number of other, ideas, I wanted to show him as a human being. I'm always very interested in the man, the human being behind every, facade we've had of, great men and great women. So the challenges, well, one of the biggest challenges we had first was to get Shrinka to sit down for an interview. Like I said, like you saw in the film, um, when I first approached him well, this conversation happened over many years. I never knew I was going to do a film when I first discovered that house in 2018. So even then, I was writing a book. I had sent him an email saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice for you to sit down and take a photo of that your old photo and retake it?" And the first time he said, "Not a ghost of a chance." That was when he said that, long time ago. And so when I got the funding to the film, I went back to him, hoping that he had forgotten that he had said that. Maybe he would change his mind. And by the time I presented he said, "No, no, I remember you. You told me, send me that email a number of years ago." And I said, "I'm not going back and I'm not going back." But he did promise to sit down for an interview. So to get him to sit down for that interview was a very big challenge because he's a traveler, as everybody knows. He's always on the move, going somewhere to another. So he gave us a couple of dates. We would arrange to meet him then, and then something would happen. He would have to go somewhere else, and then he'll give us another date, and then something else will happen again. So it took a while just trying to get him to sit down. And the day he finally gave us, I wasn't able to make it. And it was last minute because I had scheduled something else. It was a conference I was presenting a talk at. And I had to arrange with DJ, a friend of mine and colleague, who had been part of the project from the beginning, but who didn't know that he was going to be called upon to interview Shoyinka. So we walked through the interview process and what to ask and how to ask it and all of that. And thankfully, it went very well. Thanks to him, we have the interview with Shoyinka that you have in the film. And the second challenge, again, was finding Mrs. Shoyinka. She was actually said no from the very beginning, that she didn't want to be in the film. She didn't want to hear anything about the film. She didn't want to all that. So it took a long time. Actually, we finished the film. We thought we'd finished the film. We started doing the edits. I think I had wrapped on the edits, and I was all satisfied by the result because I knew that she had lived in that house longer than everyone else. Shoyinka was the most popular person, the famous person to live there, but he was not the one who lived longest there. He stayed there for like 67 to 71 or thereabout, and he was in prison for 2 years of that. So barely 3 years. And she lived there until 1980s. So I really wanted her story to be in the film. And again, Chewinga, we all already knew him. Much of the story of his life is known and popular.
Mhm.
Um, we didn't know the woman behind him. I mean, we know her name from the man died, Laide, who rejected compromise, but we didn't know her and what informed her, what did she go through and all of that. So I really wanted her there. She was the person that embodies that house as far as I was concerned. So she said no. And the film was over. And then during the editing process, when I was looking for photographs, I asked some of the daughters to please give me some of the photos from the house, especially those that showed the outside of the building beyond the inside. And they said there was a big box of photos in the house in Ibadan. And so we sent a researcher to go there and look through, and then she did. And then after she had left, we sent a fruit basket to Mama to say thank you for letting us go through your boxes of photographs. And she was so excited about just a nice basket of fruits. She said, "These people are so nice. Okay, let them come back. I will sit down with them for an interview." And so a project I had been, having sleepless night about how incomplete it would be if she was not there. She finally said yes. And so we got down and sat down with her again. Other than that, throughout the process, there were a couple of people who were not available either. They were, for instance, Jimmy Sholanke passed away. He fell sick actually the week we were supposed to interview him, and he passed away just a few weeks after that. We wanted to speak to him about a different part of Soyinka's life and then the parts in Ebrohimie Road. And then there was another person that died, Madame Tinu Soyinka, who was Soyinka's eldest sister. She was not part of those were to interview, but during the time I was supposed to interview Mrs. Professor Folabo, it was when the elder sister died, and so she had to travel. So a number of things changed in the middle of the film. I even wanted to interview Chimamanda Adichie because she had lived in a house that Achebe lived in the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and she was busy writing a novel, which is now out, so she was unavailable. So there were a number of literary challenges like that. Thankfully, we were able to, pull through and come up with a story that eventually, I think, better, captures the ideas we had at the very beginning.
Yeah, maybe the documentary captured the humor of Soyinka. It was really good. I noticed it was shot by Uncle TK.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was working with Uncle TK.
Well, I have known him for a number of years. I have always been impressed with his work, his writing, his movies, the way he brings stories alive on the screen. So it was during the time. So at the time I got the funding to the film, I didn't mention this earlier, but the idea for the film was supposed to be 50 minutes. The idea I proposed to Open Society Foundations when they were looking for ideas. I met someone from there, and I said, "Can I share some ideas with you?" And I shared a couple of ideas. And this film was not one of the ideas I shared with them, but they were taking too long to respond. So I decided, okay, let me share this idea of a film from a story I've had about Ebrohimie Road for so long. Let me see whether they'll be interested. And the proposal I wrote was a 15 minutes film of Soyinka walking through Ebrohimie Road, recounting his story and what his memory of living there was. So it was supposed to be focused on him. And it was when I got the funding and they were very excited about the film. And Soyinka said no, he was not going to go there. That I started thinking more deeply about, okay, I think I need to tell a bigger story of the house. And I would ask many more people to speak, and then I would try to construct the story of the house. And a 15-minute proposal turned out into a 1.5 hours feature film. But it was during that time when I was thinking about it that I was wondering about what was it, how do I want this story told, for instance. I'm not a director, I've never directed a film before. I also have no idea about how cameras work, what is aperture, what is lighting, what is all these things that I eventually learned over the years. So I was an officer, a friend of mine, and I think TK had been there. I'd been there a couple of times, and I thought, why don't I ask TK? I know he might be busy, he might not be interested, he might not even want to, care about this kind of story, but let me ask him. So I asked him that, I'm working on this film, I've got some funding for it. Would you be interested in at the time, I think I was thinking of him directing the film. And then he said, yeah, it's a nice idea. He looked at it, but apparently even he had not heard about Ebrohimie Road. Even though he had shot his film Oleku in UI, in 1998 or thereabout. And he knows Ibadan like the back of his hands because he's worked there. But he didn't know that Soyinka had lived in that particular house. So he was very excited about it. I was like, okay, fine. So it was way later that after I had started thinking of people to interview and how we structure the story, that I realized, okay, I don't need the director to per se, because the story is in my head, and there's no way I could convey that idea in my head to someone whose work is mainly to set the scene, help us capture the various locations we wanted to do. Um, and everything else was going to happen in the edit. The kind of people who have worked on documentaries have said this, like most of the story, actually most of the action, the work we did happened after we had finished all the interviews, which was just structuring the story together, deciding where to start, deciding what goes when. And all of these were already in my head. At least I wanted to walk through them myself. But he was very excited about working as a cinematographer, and I was happy to work with him. Again, there's not much I can say about him that has, he's not already known in Nigerian or African cinematic space. Brilliant man, very dedicated, conscientious. He does his work well, and he has a kind of relationship with Soyinka himself, which I mean, I had an idea about before, but that was not what was overwhelming feeling. It was just that he was there at the time. I knew him as, I mean, and it was available, which was more important because I was worried that he would say, no, I'm busy, I'm doing something else. But we worked together and it turned out really well. I'm very happy that he said yes.
It was brilliant. Yes,
Thank you.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So, where do you see this going? What is your wish for this project?
Well, the first thing was to make sure people see it. I've heard a lot of feedback of people who say, I didn't know that building was there. What would be done about it? People have been asking me, of all people, what do we do about the building? Is the government doing something and all of that? Questions that I didn't think I was going to have to answer. I thought just doing the film was enough to sensitize, but put the idea of documentation and the importance of history and memorialization in minds of people and let them do whatever they want to do with it. But for now, the film seems, every time people watch it, they send me really interesting responses. I'm interested in it going as far as it can go. I heard an introduction that you have got a number of movies on Netflix. I'll be happy to learn from you about how to follow your footsteps if you can get to Netflix or any other big streaming platform. The idea is that as many people as possible should see it. I'm happy about the role the film has come to play in first humanizing Soyinka as a human being, as someone who has children, who has family, who went through human processes like everybody else. It's also a story of his journey to the Nobel Prize, which hasn't been told, almost anywhere else in this kind of form. But also a story that challenges us in Nigeria and Africa about how to preserve legacy and memory. So I think it's bigger than Nigeria. It's bigger than even Soyinka himself. It's a very interesting. I mean, I watched A Complete Unknown a couple of months ago, which is a Bob Dylan story, which also again focuses on a part of his life and how he journeys from then to eventually becoming a Nobel Prize winner. And I'm hoping that this film can do the same. The dream of every documentary or filmmaker, I assume, is to have as many people see it as possible. I have the same, and that's all that matters. And I also hope eventually, of course, that people who matter in society, who have the power, will do something about preserving that space, either in buying the building or providing funds or creating an organization that can preserve it and work with the university to make sure that nothing bad happens to it, where we're hoping that the film continues to tell the story and bring people there as a means of generating some kind of tourism or interest in the University of Ibadan.
Why did you choose to honor Soyinka? Do you have any personal connection to him, or does he relate to you in any way, or even do you have a connection to Ebrohimie Road?
Well, connection to Soyinka, not quite. I went to University of Ibadan, so maybe that's the connection. I was a student of University of Ibadan, a student of linguistics from 2000 to 2005, even though I had actually my first choice of the first admission I got to UI was to theater arts, where Soyinka was a director. But I didn't go there eventually. I went to linguistics. And all through my time in UI, I knew that Soyinka had taught there. I knew that he had worked there. I knew, some of the stories that most people know, but I did not know that building was there. And I didn't know that was where it was located. It was way after I'd left UI. I've traveled out. I've come back to UI. I was wandering around with a friend of mine, and he said, "Oh, that house that you keep talking about is..." Because I had this book, the Ibadan Benkelemes Years, which published 94, which had him sitting down in front of that house with the carvings beside him. I'd always been obsessed with that photograph. So many years ago, I bought the photograph on eBay. I framed it, put it in my office. I just looked at it like, what is this guy sitting beside carvings, looking so strange with sandals. It was just something about the framing of that photo was always very exciting to me.
Mhm.
So the day I discovered that the building was there in the university I had been to, I was so excited. And I was like, okay, well, if I didn't know I would have gone to the school, then maybe the other people didn't know. So, and the more I read about the house and the role it played in his life, the more I was fascinated that it had not become a big story. Like, he went to prison from here. So why don't people know about it? His family lived here for so long. And several people knew the story like underground, but nobody was taking, there was no comprehensive, look and description and exploration of that time.
Mhm.
So the more I found out, the more I found a story that I thought was interesting to say. So Soyinka and I, the relationship we have, I mean, it's like most writers, global writers. I've been lucky to have spoken with him. The first time I met him was 2016. I had written an article, and he was having a symposium about that, about a building that was in Lagos that was torn down by government neglect, and it was having an event, a symposium, a hall, what's it called, where people come out and speak, like a public forum.
Mhm.
And that was the first time I met him. And then as soon as I met him, I realized, okay, there are a couple of questions I've always asked, I wanted to know, and I wanted to interview him. He gave me a time to come back. This was about another building that was connected to him in Lagos Island, which was a house where one of his uncles used to live. And the house had been torn down and a high rise built there by his niece. So I wanted to know what his experience was living there and what his opinion was about buildings and historical locations. It was a short interview. The same attitude he had to Ebrohimie Road, he had the same like, it's just a building, it's gone. Yeah, as long as it's the owners of the building doing whatever they wanted to do with it. So that was then. And so in 2018, then they had made the house he lived in Ife, they called it Ogun State University had purchased it. They said they wanted to turn it into a museum, and then they put some of his carvings there. And I went there, wrote about it, said I think it was not well done. That I've been to other places around the world where writers are celebrated, and the buildings are like well done. They put icons, they put items from the person's life,
Mhm.
in interpretive space. And that, what kind of place is just put carvings around that? It doesn't feel alive like a museum. And then I sent it to him, of course. And then I said I wanted to interview him about his new house in Abeokuta where he lived. That I wanted to have a few more, that I want to write a new article about it. And he invited me to Abeokuta. So I went to his house and then he drove me around. I wrote this article that went really viral. It was titled A House for Mr. Soyinka. So that was the relationship I have with him. And occasionally I'll have questions about some random thing. I'll send it to him. He'll reply when he can. Sometimes he won't. And so nothing personal, nothing too familiar. Actually, many of the people I interviewed for the film, I was meeting them for the first time, including the daughters who sat together. And it was even a matter of chance because Miss Moremi, who was the elder, was visiting the US and had been around Professor Koyibomi when I sent the email asking for an interview. And she just randomly mentioned that, oh, my sister is around. And I was like, okay, I would like to interview both of you if possible. And they were reluctant, like, what's this guy? What is he looking for? I mean, nobody knew what the movie was going to be. My idea was just it's a house, and I knew you guys live there. I want to hear your memories of the house. And I was happy that they trusted me enough to welcome me, to give me we spent about 3 hours together, brilliant conversations. And so those are the kinds. I don't have any personal relationship, but I was happy that I think usually because when I interviewed the one person, I think their experience usually was positive, and then they introduced me to someone else, and then I interviewed those people, and then they say, okay, why don't you talk to this person? And then it went on and on and on and on until I got as many people as I could.
Okay, thank
I hope
you.
that answers your question. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Moji. So I know this is kind of like a sensitive area, the financials. I mean, it was so well done, and you had some, let me use Nigerian terminology, people of caliber in there.
Yes.
So can you talk about how much your budget was?
Oh,
And
sure.
Oh, good, because a lot of
Sure.
filmmakers don't like talking about budget.
Oh, I'll be happy to. Like I said, I proposed a 15-minute movie to Open Society Foundations. They gave me $75,000 to do the film. And as soon as I got the money, I realized, okay, this is too much for a 15-minute film, to be honest. And I thought this was a golden opportunity to actually do something worthwhile. Again, I had not done a film before, so I had no idea how much it would go and what people would ask for. When I asked Tunde Kelani to be a cinematographer, he gave me his cost. I did the calculation. I realized, okay, I could pay him that amount and still have some left to do other things. All along, it's good to have some knowledge of mathematics. I kept, trying to see how much I could get away with a number of things. So I was in the US, but most of the time, I would, so many of the interviews, the first one I did was Professor Femi Yuba, who had actually no relationship with Ebrohimie per se, but he had a relationship with Soyinka because he was his first student assistant in early 50s to like 61. So he traveled out of Nigeria before Soyinka moved to Ebrohimie Road. But I had read this book that, talked about his time with Soyinka, and it was quite interesting, and I wanted to talk to him. And at the time, I had nobody to talk to. So I was like, okay, let me just talk to one person. We'll see what information comes out of that conversation, and I can pick it up with other people. And then I realized, okay, what do I do? How do I find a camera? Tunde Kelani was in Nigeria, and he would give me specifications of what camera I could use, what type, what ProRes means, what, all these things that I had no idea before. And so I went on Thumbtack, and then I found this guy who was also very helpful. He answered my questions well. And I said, how much would you take to, to fly to New Orleans and interview one person for one day? And he gave me his cost. I don't remember how much it was, maybe $1,200 or $1,500. I can't remember anymore. I have the spreadsheet of all the expenses. Anyway, so he agreed, and then I flew there, paid for my flight. He flew there, and then we did the interview. He sent me the materials, and then I think he was the same person I used when I went to Kansas to speak with Professor Volabo. So for each trip, I spent about 3,000 or 4,000, I can't remember, in expenses. And so by the time I finished getting all the US angle, I had spent, maybe $10,000 or thereabout. And then I had to do the Nigerian version. And now that cost a lot. I was surprised by how much. I mean, some were more expensive, some were less expensive. But Nigeria, we had to rent devices specially. You have to rent it for days, and if somebody you are supposed to interview doesn't show up, they don't care. You have rented for that day, and you have to pay for it. So that was something else I had to deal with. In the US, it was just bring your device for this day. We do our thing. We go. We pay you for your service and stuff like that. So I was dealing with totally different scenarios. And so we had, like I said, 13 days or so, and we scheduled a number of people. Some fell off, some rescheduled. Like I said, one person died in the middle. And then, we did all that, and then Mr. Soyinka gave a second agreement to finally come and record. And at the time we had wrapped, and then we had to schedule a few more days to go back. And that was at the same time, I think there was also some follow-ups I wanted to do with Remiraji, who you would see in the film appeared twice in different outfits. And then we had to pay for that. So those were the kind of expenses we did. And then the editing, the editor was in Brazil, and I had to ship him the materials and all and all and all. So in the end, the money was enough, was sufficient. But when I told this amount to someone a few weeks ago, and she said, I'm surprised that it was enough for you. That I thought it would have been more than that. Well, I don't know. It was my first time. I just wanted to make sure that I have this golden chance to tell a big story instead of a small one, even if it meant me paying myself very, very little, and I won't tell my wife how much I paid myself because she thought I'd made more from the film for all the time and time I spent away. But I spent a lot of it on the materials, on the people who we're working with, on applying for festivals, and a number of things like that. I hope that helps answer your question.
Yes, it does.